And our presenter today is Sue Dreier. Well, she's going to be talking about food, but she is coming to us with a background of mixing other things. She was a pharmacist. So Sue retired in 2012 with 29 years of service. She came to UCSD in 1980 as a pharmacy resident and left for a year and then returned again as an investigational pharmacist, adding various responsibilities over the year, including coordinator of pharmacy support services, manager of the UCSD home infusion pharmacy, and assistant director of pharmacy. Sue says that her most satisfying work experience was relocating and opening the off-site home infusion pharmacy in Kearny Mesa and being network administrator of the first UCSD healthcare lab. For the past 20 years, in addition, she has practiced and taught a mind, body, spirit movement practice called NIA, and she is also an ACE certified personal trainer. She joined the RA as a life member when she retired to keep her email address and blossomed as a member ever since then. She went on to become vice president, and then past president of the UCSD Retirement Association and the leader and creator of the group RA Walks, which is our fitness walking group. She has been a regular active contributor to the program committee and is behind many of the wonderful programs that we organize. Let's all welcome today, Sue Dreier.
I love my turn beads on, even though we're in the middle of Lent. And today we're going to be making jambalaya. Jambalaya is kind of a classic Cajun rice dish. It's, Cajun is one of the common, I'd say ethnic groups and cooking techniques of in New Orleans, and the other being Creole. I'll talk a little about that later. But we'll go ahead and get started because this is going to be done as like live, real-time cooking. So to make my jambalaya, which basically is rice, spices, the trinity, the holy trinity of Cajun and Creole cooking, which is onions, celery, and green pepper, and Dewey sausage or some type of sausage. Beyond the sausage, whatever other ingredients you put in are pretty much up to you. I'm going to be making chicken and shrimp, but hey, you could do duck and alligator. Or I've seen even jambalaya recipes that use crabs and clams. So almost anything goes. So I'm just going to start my pot here. And then when we get to a little bit more of a breaking point, I'll talk a little more about options. So I'm putting in about a quarter cup of olive oil. I'm gonna let that warm up a little bit. And then, like I said, my holy trinity of onions, celery, and peppers. And really there, I've used about a half a cup of each. Maybe you've picked up the recipe I submitted or not. The thing is you're looking more or less for equal parts. My jambalaya is a little heavier on the add-ins, both the vegetables and the meat ingredients. Sometimes it's made with a higher proportion of rice. But I'm cooking this on like medium high to start. And I'm just gonna like stir it and cook until the onions are soft. So the principal difference between Cajun cooking and Creole cooking. Creole is more the individuals who were wealthier, who tended to be in cities, European descent, a lot of French and Spanish settlers in there, and they brought those cooking techniques with them. However, they maybe didn't have access to the same ingredients, and that's why the Holy Trinity came about. Because in French cooking or Spanish, French cooking, that would have been carrots and instead of maybe the celery or the peppers. But here we're looking at using celery. The saying goes that a Creole family or a Creole family can feed one family with 3 chickens, and a Cajun family can feed 3 families with 1 chicken. So it's about stretching and cooking what you have. And the thing I love about making jambalaya is it is the least dogmatic dish that I make. You know, sometimes in cooking, people are very dogmatic about you have to have just this super right ingredient. But jambalaya is very flexible outside of the base of the Trinity and spices and garlic. Whatever else you put in, anything goes. So I'm cooking my little onions and celery here and kind of letting them go. So the background of like, well, how did jambalaya come about? In a way, it's similar to like Spanish paella, which also was originally sort of a fisherman's dish, where you put whatever you happen to have around, some sausages and whatever your catch of the day were. So if you had some fish, if you had some clams, and maybe you went and got a chicken, and maybe you have mussels, and maybe you lucked out and you got a lobster that day, that would go into the dish. But it doesn't have the saffron. And the spices that we're using are more spices from the Caribbean. And I'm using, and there have been several recipes published for this, but Emeril Lagasse's Emeril's Essence. And essence is a combination of paprika, basically like 2, we're gonna add like 2 teaspoons, 2 tablespoons, garlic powder, also a 2, and then salt, onion powder, oregano, thyme, black pepper, and cayenne pepper. I mix up my own, but you can buy things that say, you know, Cajun spice. I keep the recipe like right here, rubber banded to my bottle, and you know, when I use it up, I just make a new batch. I happen to make mine a little bit lower in salt. I only put in like half a teaspoon of salt, where I would have like a teaspoon of pepper and thyme and oregano. But it's one where, and if you can't stand hot and spicy, well, then one Cajun food probably isn't for you, because it may be a little spicy. But you can always put in less or vary the combinations here. Once again, we're breaking dogma. We can sort of do, to some degree, whatever we feel like. And I'm kind of checking my little onions. I don't want them brown. I just really kind of want them softened. They're getting there. And that's going to take, you know, 5, 6, 10 minutes before I start adding my other things. Now, I've pre-chopped everything to make this a little quicker. So my next thing in, and I've pre-measured this, I have salt and pepper. Let me talk a little bit about salt. There's plenty of information out there that Americans get way too much salt in their diet. And I am using packaged chicken broth, but this particular one is unsalted. And so I am gonna add salt. I would usually use the like reduced salt one, in which case I probably would not even add any salt. And I do not recommend using the like full strength, full salt chicken broth because it's way too salty. Other options, like this is the one I would normally use, the one that says like 33% less sodium. Another option is to use like better than bouillon, which this is also the reduced sodium version. And if I don't have any chicken broth around, or often I make my own, but this is also a good option. But the same thing, it's about the equivalent of salt of the reduced salt one. Okay, so my vegetables are good. So I'm going to add my salt, my pepper, my bay leaves. I've got a tablespoon and a half of garlic. Stir that around. And about a half a cup of chopped tomatoes. Now, in this case, I'm using crushed tomatoes because I had a half a can left of crushed tomatoes from something else, which I put in my freezer. And now I'm going to get them in here. But there are recipes that call for fresh tomatoes. I've used fresh tomatoes. I've used tomato sauce. I've used canned diced tomatoes. It really is just whatever I have. I got 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce. I've got a few garlic escapees I'm going to get out with this spoon. It's a little easier. And then hot sauce. You can add the hot sauce or leave it out. I'm using Tabasco because that happens to be what I have today. There's plenty of Louisiana hot sauces. There's Red Rooster. I'm trying to think of the other one I had recently, but I don't remember what it's called. And you can put in a little, you can put in a lot. I will tell you, one of the determinants for how hot your jambalaya is not only how much cayenne you have in your essence, but your sausages. And we'll talk about sausages. But anyway, I'm just going to put it. Next comes my rice. You want to use long grain white rice. Get a little bit, I'll tell you about if you want to use brown rice as a variation on how to do that. I happen to be using basmati rice because that's what I have in my cupboard. And so I rinsed it yesterday because basmati rice would need to be rinsed before it's cooked. If I were just using regular long grain white rice, unless the package is indicating that it should be rinsed, I probably would not rinse it. Then I'm going to add my chicken broth. I need about 3.5 cups, more or less. So I'm going to put in most of that package, which is 4 cups. I'm going to bring that back up to a boil and then turn it down a little bit so that it'll just simmer. Let me just give this a stir. Judge approximately how much is left in the package. And you missed at the very beginning before, actually today I did it before we started, but otherwise if I were making jambalaya without recording it and pre-cutting, here is my chicken, which has been chopped, and my shrimp. I've got about 1/2 pound of each, and I have taken my essence that goes into the recipe and mixed it with these, and they will go in later, but I give this about 10 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and set my timer. Get that warmed up. And let's talk a little about sausage. Same thing. You can slice your sausage in rounds. You can chop it up randomly. You can like cut it in little, small quarter slices. But what I have found is there's quite a bit of variation of that which is called andouille sausage in terms of how hot they are. This happens to be Adele's, and it's pork. I usually have chicken, but hey, when I looked in my freezer, this is what I had. These are like pre-cooked, so I did sample the sausage ahead of time and go like, okay, well these are not super hot, and so that's why I did add my extra hot sauce. Some of these, and both Sprouts and Trader Joe's has their own brand of andouille sausages, which are chicken. I don't remember which one, but one of them is pretty hot. Hot enough that people have gone like, wow, this is like really spicy jambalaya. And so, yeah, you kind of have to be aware of that and decide, well, like, okay, how hot do I want this? There was one year where my great niece was visiting, and at the time she was maybe like 10 or 11 years old, and she I think really wanted to be like nice and like my jambalaya, but it was just like too hot for this little kid from Michigan to eat. So if you don't like spicy food, test your sausage in advance and don't get ones that are too spicy. You can, but I do not recommend using any other one that's doesn't say andouille. If you try to use like Hillshire Farms smoked turkey sausage or something like that, which is a pre-cooked smoked sausage, it really is not going to taste right. Also, the texture is a little off, so you want a sausage that has got a little more life to it. And chicken, I'm using chicken breast. Once again, that was what was handy in my freezer, but it also comes out chicken, boneless chicken thighs work really well, and there are even jambalaya recipes that call for like whole pieces of chicken, although I've never embarked on that because that's going to take a lot longer to cook. One of the beauties of this is that not counting chopping and prep time, typically the dish could be ready in about 45 minutes. So there we are with that one. That was our jambalaya cooking. Now let's talk a little bit about the other principal rice dishes or spiced rice dishes of Louisiana. Turn this down. So here we have jambalaya. You've probably also heard of gumbo. And like, hey, well, what's the difference between gumbo and jambalaya? One of the things is jambalaya is a one pot dish. Everything's going to go in there together. Everything's going to cook together. It needs very little active time and active attention. Gumbo starts with a roux, which is a mixture of flour and fat. Could be butter, could be lard, could be oil. Most often it's either butter or lard, but hey, those are mixed together in kind of a suspension, and then cooked. And for a gumbo roux, they're cooked until the color of what I'll call well done toast. Not quite pumpernickel bread. Okay. But most gumbo roux are cooked until they're fairly dark. That is a fairly labor-intensive process because to make that roux, I would have to be continuously stirring so I don't burn parts of the flour without getting it all uniformly and evenly browned in my roux. It's also a little tricky to get the roux to have like exactly the right texture, because then once I start adding my liquid ingredients, my roux had to have been like exactly right, because there's like no going back. If my roux is undercooked, my gumbo will always have kind of a little floury flavor. Anyway, the same principal ingredients go in to some degree to gumbo, and then I'll be putting the Holy Trinity would go in: onions, celery, green peppers. It may or may not have tomatoes, but the word gumbo itself is derived from the African word for okra. So gumbo is often, but not always, made with okra, because if you've ever cooked okra, you will know that it makes its own thickener. When it cooks, it creates this little slime, which is the thickening agent. Other ways to thicken okra include belay powder, which is like ground sassafras bark, or even using, you can use a fake thickener like arrowroot or cornstarch. And gumbo is made, it's really a soup with slight thickening. It would have, similar add-ins, could be made with the same sausage and chicken and shrimp that we're doing here. Could have crawfish in it. You could sort of add what you want, but then it's all cooked into a soup. It's placed in the bowl, and separate white rice is added into the gumbo after it's done. And that's gumbo. But gumbo, like I said, is a lot more work, and it requires a lot more direct attention. The other rice dish of New Orleans that is commonly served is an etouffee. And etouffee actually means like smothered. It's also a two-pot dish. where the rice is cooked separately. And then an etouffee is really kind of your meat in gravy. It can, most of the times I've had etouffees, they have been less spicy than either a jambalaya or a gumbo. Oh, yeah. Okay. We're getting just in time. So etouffees are made, it's really more of like a gravy type consistency. And then the rice is put down and the etouffee is on it. And good, we're good. We got 21 seconds left here now. So this, I'm going to turn off my timer, and this is a good time. So I am going to add in my chicken and shrimp. It's all mixed in here good. And my sausage. And as I said, I've got about a half a pound of each. So I got about a half a pound of boneless chicken, about a half a pound of shrimp, and about a half a pound of sausage. Now I've still got, when I stir, I've still got some visible separate liquid in here. So my rice is not fully cooked, but it's sort of partially cooked. Sometimes I leave it open. Today, I don't have that much extra. If I need to, I am going to give it just a little bit more broth, just kind of judging how cooked or raw my rice is. I'm going to kind of half cover it. And then I've got about 10 more minutes that I'm going to let it cook so that, the chicken and the shrimp get cooked. The recipe calls for like medium shrimp, which you then cut up. Okay. Once again, it sort of depends on what have you got. Most often, bye, HJ. most often, I use like jumbo shrimp and cut them up. I happen to have medium shrimp this time and cut them up. Or you can use small shrimp and then let them go. But yeah, so we're going to let that cook for about 10 minutes. And then when that 10 minutes is up, I'm going to turn off the heat, put the lid on tight, and let it sit and steam for like another 10 minutes. And that's it. I've made a big pot today for the two of us. I'll tell you, my husband was really happy when he found out what I was doing for my dinner. So I will be freezing we'll have some for dinner tonight, and then I'll freeze it because it's a great dish to have just like sitting there in the freezer when you don't feel like cooking it. You pop it out, put it in the microwave, and it's right back. At serving, if you like, you can garnish it with some fresh chopped green onions or a little chopped parsley, or just have it as it is. Typically, I would serve it with either a green salad or a Southern style coleslaw. And the only thing that is unique about a true Louisiana style coleslaw, as opposed to mid-Atlantic Southern coleslaw, is that a Louisiana style coleslaw is marinated for a day or so, and it's a little bit like on the way to being sauerkraut like. but you've got the same type things and a little more sauerkraut. But anyway, so that's about it. Anybody got any questions?
Sue, it looks delicious. I can't wait to try it. It looks easy too. I love the fact that it's a forgiving recipe that you can kind of throw in what you've got. I like to cook that way, so that's very appealing to me.
Okay.
How long does it keep in the freezer?
Oh, in the freezer, it'll keep for months. I give it like 2 or 3 months in the freezer.
Okay. You put it in a glass container?
Yeah, I put it in a glass container that I can, that is both freezable and can be like microwaved, or potentially the container could even go in the oven, but I would not typically heat it up in the oven. I would typically just microwave it. I might even pull it out and let it, thaw, but you don't need to. If how you've got it packaged is ready to go straight from your freezer, you microwave, you can go straight in.
That's great. Sounds great. Members, do we have any questions for her?
Thank you, Sue. That was really fantastic. You probably remember I grew up in New Orleans. I was telling everybody before you got on today. And I really appreciate the fact that you wore Mardi Gras beads. That's in the spirit of things.
That's right.
Nice.
Did they give you, did they feed you this when you were a baby?
Oh, yeah. My mama made jambalaya, shrimp étouffée, crawfish étouffée. Gumbo is a little bit hard for even the established cook, but occasionally we would have gumbo. Like Sue said, it's pretty complicated. A little harder than it sounds, but it's really incredibly good. It's one of the, you probably heard the song by Jimmy Buffett, "I Will Play for Gumbo." It's that good.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those of you who want to get into that New Orleans spirit, Mother's Day weekend is Gator by the Bay down at Spanish Landing. There will be folks who serve jambalaya, although theirs tend to be a little heavy on the rice and a little less on the other, but they bring in like 10,000 pounds of crawfish.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's only about 3 places that the guy goes to, about 3 festivals, and one of them is our Gator by the Bay. But it's crawfish, it is Cajun and Zydeco music, and now they have Latin and other types of music, dance floors and dance lessons. It runs Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Sounds fun. Are you participating in it in some way or just going to it?
Well, I participate in that. I come by on Thursday. I'm one of the volunteers who helps with the setup. And then one of the things they do is that every afternoon they conduct a Mardi Gras parade. And what I do in the parade is I toss beads to the crowd.
Awesome, Sue. Awesome.
So, I mean, we got banners, we got bands, we got people dressed up. It really is a lot of fun.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
And you are not from there, right? You've adopted your love for everything New Orleans, right?
That's correct. I am not from there. Actually, since being in San Diego, I have met several people who are, although I always liked the food. Okay. And the times I have been there, like the food has always been wonderful. When you, I think, originally published the listing saying I was making Southern specialties, and I was going, hey, it sounds like I'm going to make, fried chicken and hush puppies.
Yeah.
But I don't make fried chicken or hush puppies.
All right. Well, this was really delightful. Thank you so very much for sharing this. Everybody's got the recipe. We will post the recipe with the video on YouTube for those who weren't able to join us. But thanks again. This was really delightful.